I recognize the Territorial at-Large Member, Honourable Lorna Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, even though I don't have to, I do find it necessary to explain why I abstained when the division of the House was called. I did not abstain because I didn't know whether I supported or did not support this bill. I abstained because in its current form, as has been said by both the for the 6th District and the Deputy Premier, in its current form, I cannot support it. Madam Speaker, I am fully committed to the passage of this act in a form that this House can live with and that will be in the interest of the people of this country. My problem, Madam Speaker, with the bill is that I question whether we as a people have the capacity to, as a country, people in this country, and as the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, which has a significant role in this bill, whether we can carry out this bill. I agree with those who have said before that we must make sure that there is balance. We also, Madam Speaker, must make sure that we have the capability and the capacity to carry out this bill or this act in whatever the final form is. Madam Speaker, I too questioned the Premier's, I don't want to say motives, but when he strayed from the objects and reasons of this bill to go much wider, I too questioned what the reasons were. But, Madam Speaker, I am staying with the objects and reasons of this bill, which state that they are to rectify, the bill seeks to amend the Police Act to rectify certain deficiencies identified in the 4th round mutual evaluation report, and so on. Madam Speaker, the particular criterion is 31 of the mutual evaluation report, and it is called the powers of law enforcement and investigative authorities. The powers of law enforcement and investigative authorities, which incidentally, Madam Speaker, were mostly met. They were mostly met except for these 3 areas, and the 3 areas are witness statements, covert operations, and controlled deliveries. In terms of the witness statements, these could only be taken through international cooperation cases. And so, Madam Speaker, the need, according to the mutual evaluation report, is for us to have proper case law and the implementing capabilities in order for us to comply with the requirements of the mutual evaluation of our national action plan, I should say. Madam Speaker, I cannot state enough the importance of us having balance in terms of our law enforcement, that we have We pay special attention to individual rights, oversight, and accountability. I believe it was the Premier who mentioned that in the last sitting, this Police Act, or some version of it, the bill, I should say, was brought before the House, and it was not passed. But, Madam Speaker, we in this House must find a way to balance the human rights that have been so aptly spoken about by my colleague from the 6th District with what needs to be done in terms of complying with international standards. And, Madam Speaker, I believe we will accomplish that. I think that we will spend some time getting there, but I am convinced that we will get there. Madam Speaker, I want to speak to two areas. Those areas are controlled deliveries and covert operations. If you go to page 5 of the bill, it defines controlled delivery, and it says it means the technique of allowing illicit or suspect consignments to pass out of, through, or into the territory of one or more states with the knowledge and under the supervision of their competent authorities, with a view to the investigation of an offense and the identification of persons involved in the commission of the offense. Madam Speaker, with all those complexities in controlled deliveries, that's involved in controlled deliveries, I have to question, what is the purpose of this bill? Are we simply fulfilling the requirements of the mutual evaluation report? Are we seeking to get ourselves, make sure we keep off the gray list? Or worse, Madam Speaker, we will only know sometime later this year. I believe it will be in June. But, Madam Speaker, we see ourselves as a big player in the big leagues, and we must do what we need to do. Madam Speaker, I have to say that at times this House sounds as though it errs more on the side of human rights than what is right. We tend to err, we are not finding the balance that is needed, and we have to find that balance. Madam Speaker, I have to say, in addition, that there is a problem with this bill if we intend to not just pass it, but to enforce it. Madam Speaker, I say that because last year, I believe it was in May or June, this report called a review of law enforcement and criminal justice bodies in the British Virgin Islands by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire Rescue Services was laid on the table of this House. And, Madam Speaker, this report identifies several shortcomings of the police force. Madam Speaker, if I read from page 37 of the report, just a sentence, if you permit me to, it says, the detective chief inspectors and detective inspectors aren't trained as senior investigating officers in either reactive or covert investigations. The force provides limited continuing professional development opportunities. The recommendation, Madam Speaker, is that the police commissioner should make sure there is an appropriate training plan to professionalize the investigation process for personnel in the serious investigation and major incident teams. Madam Speaker, the report also, the legislation, if we look at page 7 of the legislation and we look at covert operations. Covert operations are defined as the authorizing authority. In fact, it's not just defined, it's telling you what the authorizing authority may authorize. He or she may authorize covert operations for the purpose of gathering evidence of criminal behavior, of serious criminal behavior, or B, the prevention, detection, or investigation of an offense related to money laundering, terrorist financing, or other financial crimes. Madam Speaker, it gives me no pleasure to again refer to the report, the same report by the Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services of the United Kingdom that was tabled last year, which, Madam Speaker, points to on page 39. During our review, it says, we found evidence of serious corruption among a small number of police officers. And they do say, Madam Speaker, they do say that some of this has been caught. But it does say in the end that the range of examples that other police officers that they interviewed showed that there continued to be corruption of a serious nature. So, Madam Speaker, there has been discussion or mention of possible rogue officers, and we hope that they are very much in the minority, or if they do exist. But, Madam Speaker, it makes us wonder whether we are ready or whether we are in a position to really implement this act, as I said, in whatever form we end up with. At 38L of the Act, Madam Speaker, 38L2, you bear with me. Sorry, it's 38I2. It says that 38I2, subject to section 38J, the electronic surveillance of persons may be authorized by the commissioner or deputy commissioner, in this section referred to as the authorizing authority, on application by a police officer or of the rank of inspector or above. Then at 38J, it says that a police officer authorized under 38I may apply to a magistrate or a judge of the High Court to issue a warrant authorizing the use of electronic surveillance equipment, and so on. Madam Speaker, I would strongly recommend that at all times that this authorization should come from a magistrate or a judge rather than from the commissioner or deputy commissioner of police, for obvious reasons, including who watches the watchers, who, as has been said before. So, Madam Speaker, with all these difficulties with this bill, we have our work cut out for us. And the question for you, Mr. Speaker, is how do we fix all this? It is a lot of work. Are we fixing it to implement it? Or are we fixing it to satisfy the requirements of the mutual evaluation report? And I should say, Mr. Speaker, that I did ask whether, because I was referring to a report for which a volume 2 should have been received, and I understand that that volume 2 has not yet been received. And so the concerns are valid in terms of whether we have the capacity and or the capability to really follow through on this bill, which we hope will become an act to satisfy the requirements of the mutual evaluation report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.